Remember, every treasure comes with a price.
I'm Steph.
And I'm Ange.
We're
Nerdazons.
Nerdazons.
That was good. First take
Yay,
too.
thanks. Woo, we're getting better.
We
And
are.
we're super supportive when we do this.
We sure are. Absolutely.
I chose to do Crazy Rich Asians this episode. I was introduced to the film first, as I think quite a lot of people were. I watched it on the plane when I was going to Japan, I think, at the time, and I just fell in love with the movie. And it was a great opportunity. Now I'm trying to do more books, venture out, and I thought, why didn't I, do the book and we'll compare that way? So that's what I
See,
love about the
I
podcast.
had seen the movie. I've never watched it, but I was like, ugh, this is going to be a trashy romance, whatever. And then I listened to the book. I actually listened to the book this time first, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's going to be great. That's all. I'm going to leave that there until we
Okay,
get
all
into
right.
it.
Let's we'll start with the synopsis. I'll begin with the movie first, just because it's a little bit shorter to read. So, Crazy Rich Asians, the film, 2018. This contemporary romantic comedy, based on a global bestseller, follows a native New Yorker, Rachel Chu, to Singapore to meet her boyfriend's family. And we'll go with the book.
Easy.
So the book, Crazy Rich Asians. Crazy Rich Asians is an outrageously funny debut novel about three super rich, pedigreed Chinese families and the gossip, backbiting, and scheming that occurs when their heir to one of the most massive fortunes in Asia brings home his American-born Chinese girlfriend to the wedding of the season.
Okay, so
It
let's
was
start off.
it was longer to
I
read.
know. One of my first notes is, because I started with the book first, I'm really liking the book so much. I'm listening to it and it's so much fun. I didn't even realize I was halfway through. I didn't even have to pay much to attention. Oh my gosh, how much money did they have? And also, I went to Singapore a few years ago and the airport is incredible.
I've
Oh my goodness. I remember we got there at like 9 a.m. because by the time we checked out, our flight wasn't till later in the afternoon, but we just decided to hang out at the airport all day. And I went to the butterfly sanctuary there. They even had bits where there were sleeping rooms, so you could go in and have a sleep, and that they had eye masks there. They had little lockups underneath the beds for you to lock your stuff up in. They had played beautiful, just super chill music. I ended up having a couple of hours sleep there. We went on the little train that goes around there, ate so much
oh.
food. I wish that I could like live in that airport.
I've
It
seen
was
so
awesome.
many travel vlog videos just on the airport alone, and yeah, I feel like you need a full day to go in there and explore.
hmm And one of my main points about this movie and the book is that I don't know if I do like it or not because of the fact that I'm so conflicted of how much money they have. I felt like physically sick in the amount of money and so much waste that they have. And when she's like, "Oh my God, how can you live off $800,000 a year?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"What? I live off like an eighth of that, not even."
Yeah, yeah. Okay, all right. Well, how about we break it down? We'll start with the
Mhm.
story. The
Sure.
story, I started with the movie,
Mhm.
and it was outlandish, it was. And I sort of looked more to the romance side of it. I think that's what drew me into it, and I really liked it. And it was a bit, I think when you watch the movie, it definitely flashes the money around. And the Bucks party on the big shipping container, or you've got the helicopter. Let's just get a helicopter and we'll escape. And it definitely flashes it around, but it doesn't draw too much attention away from, I think, the main story of Nick and Rachel,
Mhm.
which was okay. And then when I listened to the book, I did not realize just how much more in depth that story gets. And you're right, like I was blown away by the families, the gossip. I was blown away by how nasty they get and just over money. And it's just like, wow. It was I definitely enjoy starting with movies and then going to books because you get like a double experience because there's so much more in the book and you don't realize it, and it was just so much more.
I think I'm going to start next time with, if we're going to do books, I think I'm going to start with the movie first. But then again, when I start with the books first, I already have an imagination of what they look in my head.
Yes.
And then when I watch the movie, I'm really disappointed because they're not what I imagine them to be.
Yeah.
But then when I watch the movie first, I'm like,
You've got an image and you can
Yeah.
use those actors as the image when you listen or read the book.
yeah, but then I'm like, but that's not what she looked like. Why would you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Damned if you don't. I
Whichever way
don't
you
know.
go.
I find I don't tend to hate either as much when I start with the movie first. The few that I have watched book to film adaptations and I've listened to a book first or I've actually read a book first, most of the time it doesn't work out as well for me because the same thing, I've already created my own image. But I feel like for this and the way the film was done, I'm going to talk purely story here. I think the story, it's a modern story, so I think it was translated well into film. The story, you can tell, was different. It didn't have as much, but again, some of the story got pretty dark in some parts of the book. I wasn't expecting it. Like, for example,
The fish scene.
the fish scene was darker. The mum, like when she goes over her abuse and why she left, that was much darker. The Bucks party was worse, and like some of the scenes like that I was listening to, I paused at one point and I turned to my partner, I'm like, oh my god, this is so much worse in the book. This is like,
And especially, I've got a note here about the fish scene. The fish in the bag, when she comes home and the fish is just rotted and blood's everywhere in the
room.
I wasn't expecting them to drop the C-bomb.
Same, because it's not in the movie. And when I listened to it, I was just like,
That
whoa.
was way more intense.
Yeah.
And the fact that Astrid was the one that says, don't react. You don't want in the book. She's like, don't
It wasn't
react.
Astrid, it was her cousin.
Yeah, but in the movie, Rachel was like, I'm not going to react. And I'm like, but it came from her cousin, not from Rachel.
I actually don't think that was a bad change, though, because for a movie, they condensed a lot. Like, after listening to the story and realizing how much wasn't there, they condensed a lot. But I think it worked to the movie's advantage. And the way I'll go to the biggest point that we'll talk about is the ending. The ending in the movie really wraps it up. He proposes, the mother accepts her even though the rest of the family doesn't, and they just leave it to that with a big party. I think that was a great ending for a film and to leave it as a standalone film. However, it does not end like that in the book. And I now need to get the next book because I want to hear...
I didn't realize it's a series.
I think it's a trilogy.
Ah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know, but I know it is a series. And I was going to get the next book, but I think this is the downfall to Audible, is it had a different voice, a voice actor reading the book. And I just read a lot of comments saying, oh, it really ruins it when you go from one to the next. And I thought, if I give myself some time in between, then it won't be so bad. And then I can get the next book. But I think I 100% will listen, read, air quotation marks that I'm doing. I always say read, but it's listening. But I will listen to the next book because it's a really interesting story.
I liked the ending of the book. I like that, I'm not a romantic person at all, but I like the fact that, Nick was like, hey, I'm going to bring China to you. I'm going to bring your mum to say that your dad's not really your dad and that you don't want to visit him. And I liked that they built on that way more. And it was more shocking to find out that Rachel's dad wasn't her dad and all of this kind of stuff, where it's in the movie it was just like, yeah, he's not your dad.
Oh, I actually thought that scene was done really well in the movie. I feel it was more emotional, especially because you're watching the mum having to have that conversation with her child, to be like, I never wanted to tell you that I was in an abusive relationship and I had to flee for my life. To see her do that, I thought it was done really well. And you can tell the look she gives Rachel, you can tell it's like she almost knew that day was going to come where she would have to talk about it. Obviously, they toned it down for the film's sake. They just said she had a friend who she fell in love with, which I thought was kind of romantic in the way she said it. But in the book, it was just so much more intense. And, I remember I paused it at one point for the book and I told my partner, I'm like, oh, my God, the family that, her real family were plotting on how they can get past the one child
I
her family
know.
scheme. And when they were like, oh, we can blind her with acid, and I'm like, oh my God, that is,
I know.
which, I
What?
mean, you used to hear things, like, you used to, well, hear and read stories about how if you had a girl, they would just abandon these children so they could have another child. Like, it was just such a horrible.
I was listening to it while I was like doing the dishes or something, and
Same,
I
I was
just
doing the
went,
dishes too.
and when I got up to that part, I was just like, holy moly,
Yeah.
what the actual F?
I think the way it was done in the book, for how intense it got for the mother, you can understand just how adamant she was that Rachel didn't go to China. And it makes sense because she's like, anything could happen. Whereas in the movie, it was a bit more subtle, and it was nice that it came from the mother and they had that talk so she could understand why her mother left. Yes, that her father is still there somewhere, and things like that. And I think it fit the film, and I think the one for the book fit the book.
I was really disappointed in the movie, and I started it
Really?
and I was just like, I don't know if I can watch this because they were so, like, I understand after listening to it that they were, ridiculously rich and that they were over the top, but I feel like the movie they did over the top, and I was just like, oh my gosh, the amount of money, and like actually seeing the Bucks party. And even that, I felt like that missed something as well. The Bucks party, I felt like missed a little something in the fact that, how Nick's like, nah, with his friend, I'm going to get on a helicopter. We're going to, yeet this party and go on, do our own thing. And it just showed the party, and then the next scene they were
In
on the
Malaysia.
beach. Yeah, and I just felt like, if I didn't read the book, how did they get there? What?
Yeah, so I didn't have that problem because I noticed it does a panning shot. So they obviously took quite a lot out of the book, and they used a shot to sort of make up for a lot of that story that they cut. So they do a panning shot before they see Nick and Colin sitting there in the deck chairs. You see the two helicopters on a rock, like in the middle of nowhere. So that's how they got there. And it kind of explained it, that's when he's like, we need to get off. And then it pans and it shows you the helicopters. And it just shows you that that's how they got out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that problem because I saw that shot.
I guess I might have just like looked down and missed it.
I liked the film. I didn't think that it was they were ridiculously rich. And I don't think it was a detriment to the film. I actually think it sums it up in the actual title of the book.
I know
and
we're
the
jumping
movie.
around a bit with the storyline, but I want to get to the wedding. The wedding, I actually have a note here that says, I put, holy shit, the wedding was so beautiful. Oh, wait, they're walking down the aisle? That's it. And I felt like that they built up this wedding to be something spectacular, which it kind of was, but then it was just, and it ended. I felt like the wedding needed more to it because that was the whole point of them going to Singapore, was to attend this lavish wedding. They missed out on the tea ceremony, and also the grandma, they didn't show how she was always protected, how she always had the people with her at
more backstory to her.
More backstory.
We can talk about that in the characters, but for the story part, I think for both, again, I'm just going to outrightly say I liked both, as you can tell, but I think it worked well for each of them. So with the film, yes, the whole point of the film was they went to Singapore for this wedding, right? But that was only
a drop in the ocean of the story.
Correct. Yeah. So the rest of the whole main story is this really rich guy has a girlfriend and everyone wants to know about it. And the wedding is like a pivotal point for Nick when he realizes, yep, she's the one. And it focuses on them two staring at each other. But if you notice in the film, they also show Eleanor, she notices when the two of them mouth I love you to each other. Mm-hmm. And that's the point for her when she's like, I need to, because in the book, she actually doesn't interact with Rachel much. She's too busy getting evidence that she needs. And she chooses in the book not to drop that evidence until she knows, okay, Nick is very serious about this girl. And that's the point in the actual wedding. She notices that, because then after that it takes you to the reception, and then that's when they drop the bomb. So I think, for context, I think it did that well in a film. So I know we've kind of been a bit all over the place with story, as there were a lot of differences between the book and the movie, the wedding, the bachelor party, all of that. How about we go to the bulk of it and we look at the characters?
I want to start with Rachel. I'm just going to say I think she's exactly how I imagined her in the book.
Yeah,
I think she did a really good job.
Constance Wu did an incredible job with her.
And the fact that, when she went to first class for the first time, and that's another thing about the movie, is that she got to the airport and she's like, oh, where are we going? Going economy. And then they're like, oh, we'll take your bags, and she's like, what? Like, she's like, WTF, what's going on here? Whereas I don't think she came across as shocked about being on first class as she was in the movie, in the book.
Yeah, I think there was one line that she had on the plane where she said, I think it's a little weird that you didn't tell me about this. Yeah. I think in the book, Rachel, she doesn't sort of explore it as much as early as you want her to, whereas on the plane she was immediately like, I think it's weird you haven't told me about this. You're the guy that steals, my Netflix subscription and all of that. In the book, I don't know, it's like she almost chooses not to sort of question it yet until she gets there. And then all the pieces start to and she's a very intelligent girl, so she would know. Also, biggest difference I wanted to mention is they were dating in the book. I guess this is kind of still in our story category. We're a bit all over the place today. They were dating for 2 years before he took her to meet the rest of the family. So 2 years, it's a decent time to know that, oh, okay, you guys are pretty serious at that age. Because she's 27, nearly almost closer to 30. So you can tell, okay, 2 years, you're pretty serious at that point. If they were 18, I'd be like, okay, 2 years is nothing to an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
But in the movie, they were only dating for a year. So it doesn't seem as, I don't know, it doesn't seem as serious. Or I think for me, if I knew that, you were dating 2 years, you were living together, it would seem so much more serious to me that they're ready to get married. But after 12 months, it's like, why would you get married after 12 months of dating? And they make this whole big deal about it. But yeah, in the movie, I think they should have left it as they were dating for 2 years. And I think it was much more shocking to the mum when she finds out, oh, he has been dating someone for 2 years and I didn't even know a whisper of it,
And what about Nick Young?
Oh, he was so perfect.
I watched it with my mum, and Mum, when he took his shirt off, and Mum's like, whew, hello,
right?
to fan herself, and I'm like, he's all right, he's
so
all right.
Handsome. He's definitely dreamy, that's for sure. And the accent,
the English accent,
yeah,
they nailed. Yeah,
they nailed it with Henry Golding. Yeah, he is, and I'm pretty sure Gemma Chan is also from the UK as well.
Yeah, she's been in a lot of Aussie stuff as well.
Oh, I didn't know Aussie stuff. Yeah, I've definitely seen her in some American, it's like she's hit the American film sort of industry. There is a few, I think there's 3 Australian Chinese in the film.
So she's in a show on ABC called Humans, where it was based on a parallel universe where she was a robot and she's AI, and that was really that's a great show. I recommend anybody to watch it.
I think I've seen trailers for it.
I've seen her before and I was like, oh my gosh, that's Gemma Chan. I really like her. So and that's another thing that I was a little bit disappointed about in the movie, is that they didn't really touch upon why Astrid's husband, because in the book, they obviously, break up for a bit because he can't handle how she's become such an independent person and has her own franchises and things like that. And he's like, I can't believe that you have to hide all your clothing from me. And because he's not as rich as her.
I don't think it's, sorry to cut you off there. I don't think he wanted to split with her in the book because she's independent. She was already rich before he met her. Yeah. It was that he didn't feel adequate to provide for her. Yes. And he realized it the day he made his biggest figure, and he said, that was the day I realized that was, it's like peanuts to you.
And, they didn't really, he was just like, I want to break up. It wasn't as impactful in the movie because I felt like, you know, he loved her, but he would never be good enough.
Yeah, definitely in the book, I didn't expect quite a big chunk of the book and the story in the book. Kind of jump back to story here. We're just going to throw our structure out for this episode. Expect quite a big chunk of this book and the story of the book to follow Astrid's and her husband's story. It was so much more intense. You know, she was they were traveling so much. Her ex also comes in, so you see him at the party at the very end, but they don't explain who it is. You just see the two of them look at each other, but that's her moment of independence. She's already walked away from him at that point, and they don't explain that was the ex that she was previously engaged to.
And the fact that, you know, they go to therapy and the therapist is just like, give him time to be by himself, and then if he'll come back to you, you know. And I like that it wasn't just like, I want to divorce you, go away.
Yeah, I find that the book was so much more complex because at the very end, you've gone through the entire thing. Like her and her ex even skip the reception. They get on a boat and they leave the reception just to go to Hong Kong and find him out and find out if he's had a child, because the child would have essentially been a year older than their child, because he was a 4-year-old and they had a 3-year-old. And it just makes you think, oh my God, he started this affair when they, before they even had their kids and all that. And you think it's so, like, scandalous and so bad. And then when you get there, you find out he made the whole thing up just so she wouldn't feel bad when they separated. You know, just because he understood that to save face was important to her, that if he did it this way, she would save face and they could separate. And it just shows you that for him to go into that much detail, he
obviously
did care.
Loved her.
Yeah, whereas in the movie when they split, it's just, you know, I hate how he turned it on her, and he's like, you know, I get no emotion from you. Be angry, be upset. Who cares what people think? This is why, you know, it's almost like, well, this is why I did it, and you don't even care, and he just storms off. And I'm like, hang on a second. She is not the one to blame in this situation. And I like that she like called him out on that at the end. That was one thing that I thought was really good. I liked the depth of their relationship in the book, because the whole way through the book I was like, oh my God, he's so much worse. And then at the very end you're like, oh my God,
I feel so bad for him. He's such a nice person. But in the movie he didn't come, like, he was just, pardon my language, but he came across as just an asshole.
Yeah, he was uninterested, and he had like a goddess of a woman, you know, and that's what her ex is like. How could anyone do that to you, you know? Yeah, I think their story and relationship was much more interesting in the book.
I also want to quickly talk about Fiona Zhee as Kitty Pong. I liked Kitty Pong in the books. I thought, you know, she was so fake and so just ridiculous with her really low-cut top, and like you came across like she was such a ditz. And then, you know, when they were like, nah, we're going to get you to talk to this other guy and like he's going to try to kiss you, will you pass the test? And she ended up, you know, passing and being genuinely in love. But I thought she was more buxom and more over the top, whereas I don't think she was as over the top in the movie.
I have to disagree with you there. I actually thought Kitty did better in the movie. And I think it's because Kitty, to me, in the book wasn't memorable. I remember Francesca and Amanda much, much more, which we'll get into next. And Kitty was just kind of like, yeah, she was just we got to stop these two engagements in one night sort of thing. And she was just the second engagement. Whereas in the movie, and it just shows you how having that girl in the low-cut, trashy dress, you know, making a scene just in the background can really make a whole character without having to add dialogue. And then it just shows you how quickly and how fake of a person she is when Oliver's like, maybe you need to go and look at Bernard more than you need to do Alistair. And it's so quick that she's quick to run away and hide behind the trees with him. And it just shows you how fake of a person she is. And they did it all perfectly. She didn't have much dialogue at all.
Yeah, I liked her better in the books, I'm going to say.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
But also Nico Santos as Oliver Toussaint.
I love him.
I didn't like him in the movie. I thought he was just too campy and too over the top, and just I did not like him at all. Sorry, you're looking so shocked right now.
I don't think he was that at all. Have you seen Superstore?
Yes, and I wasn't a huge fan of Superstore.
Because he's much more campy in that than he is in this. I thought he was perfect. I think he played a perfect Oliver. Oliver is like that person where he knows he's not the best, but he doesn't want to be sort of the outcast. He can just be the errand boy. He is the eyes and ears, so he knows and watches everything. And he played that perfectly. Like, he knew everyone. It's like, you want to know who's flying off to Hong Kong this weekend with who? I can tell you because I know all the gossip. And he
And
came
that's
across
what
that
I
well.
liked about it in the book, is that he was like you said, he was the eyes and ears of the book. Whereas, I don't know, he just irked me in the movie.
Okay.
I don't know. And
please don't tell me that you did not like Awkwafina in this as well.
yeah, I didn't like her either.
Right. Just gonna bite my tongue.
I did not. Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't.
I loved Awkwafina in that as well.
I don't know. She just like irked me. Although I can't wait to talk about like the costumes and stuff.
Before we move on, I want to talk about, we're just going to gloss over those characters because I think we'll get into a debate if we do. Let's talk about Francesca and Amanda. I just want to say, didn't even know there was a Francesca in the movie. And then when you listen to it, the book, oh my God, wow, Francesca was such a cow. And Amanda, it got so graphic when okay. All right, let's break this down. So the first time you meet Amanda in the movie, you think she's a friend, which kind of makes it so much more nasty when she gets to the fish scene because you're like, oh, she did that. Whereas in the book, Amanda doesn't show up until Nick takes her to his secret hideout where, they were about to share a kiss and she comes in with a guy and she's like, oh, this is where I had my first kiss and he's standing right here. And it's just like, oh my God, that's such a slap in the face if you're the other girl there, because you think, oh, I'm just a notch on the belt, sort of thing. And then when they're talking, and Francesca, she just instigated so much nasty gossip. And it's like, why lie? Why lie? Why do that?
Because you've got so much money and that you don't seem to care about what anybody else thinks because...
Yeah. It's just so nasty. And then the whole, which I thought I wasn't expecting, the whole threesome thing when she drops that bomb at the table, and I'm like, what? You kind of I thought in the book that kind of ruined this Prince Charming image of Nick when she dropped that, and I was just like, oh, okay. I think I preferred not having that in there. He was that, he was that gem that everyone's trying to get because he was handsome, rich, and nice, and then you drop that in there and it's like, oh.
Triple threat.
Okay, so it's not as, nice as you think. Those two were, they were so vindictive and nasty in the book. I was shocked. And, Francesca, you don't even really see in the movie at all. I know she's listed in IMDb, but I don't think she has any dialogue. I'm not sure.
She was pretty forgettable in the movie.
Yeah, and they just had a few things with Amanda. I think they just threw her in there because you kind of do need her in there as a threat. Like, she's a threat for who could, be engaged to Nick, but whatnot. But, I definitely have to say the characters in the book were much better because they were so intense.
And also going to the bachelorette party where she was like, I'm going to you've got 2 minutes, pick out whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I thought, wait, why are they doing it on the beach? In the open? It should be in a department store, No, because
they're that rich that their mum has brought in all these specialty, they've got the resort and the island to themselves. And actually, since we're on the bachelorette party, let's talk about Araminta. So in the movie, she seems like a genuinely down-to-earth girl, and she doesn't do anything wrong in the movie at all. She obviously had no part in the fish at a bachelorette party or anything like that. She welcomed Rachel as much as Colin did. In the book, she actually had a moment of character where everything revolved around Astrid. Ashley didn't change her dress, so her immediate mood at her own wedding soured. To be like, oh, how could she not buy a new dress for my wedding? And I'm like, are you getting married just for this one person's opinion?
Of course you are.
Like, dude, just enjoy your wedding. Why does it matter? And then when they were welcoming guests at the island for the reception, again, it was all focused on Astrid. It's like she needed her approval just for her wedding. It's like, dude, it's your wedding. Just enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see that depth to her character. But I did like that they made her down to earth in the movie, because Colin, Araminta, and Astrid were the three other down-to-earth rich people amongst all those incredibly crazy sort of rich people. So having her as one of those helped balance out, I think, the characters in the movie.
And what about, like, Ken Jeong as women go? I thought that was really funny when he started talking Chinese and he's like, just joking, we all speak English here. And, you know, making her feel so awkward. I thought that was so great, and that how loving and welcoming that family was to
They
Rachel.
were so welcoming. I think that's what I liked the most about that family, is just how loving they were. And in the book, I think they did pretty good for that scene. There were a few changes to the family itself. So the kids, the little girls, they aren't their daughters, they're their nieces, because their eldest is already married. Yes, he tries to pass her off to the other son. You know, I thought they were really great. They acknowledged Rachel for her intelligence. They could see, you know, hey, that's a really good thing. It doesn't matter if you're not rich, you're incredibly intelligent. I liked that they had like a feast for lunch. They were hard workers, which I also liked about that family. You know, they acknowledged that their wealth came from working. This is in the book. They acknowledged that their wealth came because their family
worked really hard.
Yeah, they created a business, and the whole family worked to keep that business thriving. And I liked that about them. I think they were a pretty pivotal part of the book, because for them, I think they were meant to be one of the rich. And the fact that they didn't know this whole other level of richness on the island, like this whole hidden area that they didn't even know existed, family names that you wouldn't know unless you're in those circles. That's why they were like, oh, I don't know who, you know, this person is. I thought that was pretty interesting, because it was a really good contrast in the book to show you that there's us economy people.
Yeah.
They are technically your business class people, and then you've got like the youngs up here in first class, you know. And it was a good eye opener, because they think, oh no, we're the rich ones. Wait, there's this whole other world. And it just makes you as a listener and a reader think, holy crap, they are really mega rich. If the rich are poor in their minds, you know.
And I like that in the book they had a lot more story on the mum as well of Eleanor. And I like that, you know, when they go shopping and they're like, oh, let's go, you know, down this corridor and whisper this word and we can go get all of these brand new handbags, and even though they were knockoffs, and like I like that they had more with her in the book.
Yeah,
because like I said before, she didn't come across as such a bitch in the movie as she did in the book. She was horrendous in the book, and I was just like thinking, if I was Rachel, I would just get myself out of that family, out of that world. I couldn't be part of it.
Yeah, but I think what you see of her in the book, Rachel doesn't witness. It's when she's at home and she's, you know, gossiping to her husband and saying all this stuff, or other people are gossiping to her. That's the sort of Eleanor you see. Whereas in the movie, I think you see the side of Eleanor from the book where, yes, she's always had to mind her place in that family in order to push Nick to be the favorite, because she was never accepted. And I think when you see, she keeps that air of grace, Michelle Yeoh, when she talks, and she keeps her head held high. But she also keeps, you know, she watches her tongue so she doesn't come out of favor. And I think you see that side of her, because it makes sense if you listen or read the book. I think they delve into more of the sacrifices she makes, and the fact that, so in the book, Nick says, that his mum will go on random trips. That's how he met Colin, because he got a lift home with his grandma one day, because his mother had left. But you don't realize until the end of the book, when she is muttering to herself, that her sacrifice was she always made sure she was never around. It was either just the grandmother, like Amar was with him, but if she was never around, then she would be around. So she sacrificed being around her son just so he could
be Amar's favorite.
Yeah, and have better standing with her than what she had. And I think that came across better in the book, because you could explore it more. You're kind of limited with what you can do in the film. And they explored that she was never accepted, but they didn't explore the sacrifice that she had, where she missed out on having her son. You know, she missed out on raising her own child.
But also, I think the movie mainly worked on Rachel and Nick's side of the story, because, you know, you've only got limited amount of time, so you can't really explore every single person's background.
Correct,
so
yeah.
When we were talking about it, like when we saw Eleanor, we kind of saw it from either Nick or Rachel's point of view.
Yeah, correct.
And,
yeah, so I think for a visual perspective of this film and condensing it to just one film, they were supposed to make the sequel, but I don't think it ever came to fruition. I didn't Google why, but I think they did pretty good as a standalone film. I think it told the story, the important parts that you needed to know. It also rounded it up, so if they didn't make the sequel, you know, happy story, they ended with their engagement little celebration. I thought it was good.
And going into the movie, like when you said, we're doing it this, I felt like that the movie was very much hyped up, and that everybody, I noticed that a lot of people either loved this movie or hated this movie. There was not very many people on the fence, and I just felt like it was very hyped up. And when I watched it, because I had such high expectations from, you know, everybody saying it's such a beautiful film, it's great, blah blah blah, I went in thinking it's going to be an amazing film. And especially after reading the book or listening to the book, I had a lot of high expectations. And I think that disappointed me. Listening to everybody's point of view about it, I was a little bit disappointed about the movie.
2 months in a row you don't like my choice.
Oh, I didn't. Wait, what was the other one? Oh, yeah, Pride and Prejudice.
I see how this is. Maybe I shouldn't pick things that I want you to watch.
Hey, I ended up liking that the horror musical.
Yeah, but that wasn't an episode.
What was that called again?
It's called Reaper the Genetic Opera.
That's right. And it's on, I've watched it a few times since.
It's good. I listen to the soundtrack all the time.
That soundtrack is awesome. Sorry.
That's all right. Okay. Should we move on to, you know, our miscellaneous topics? So your set, costumes.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Props.
With Awkwafina, I loved her outfit. And
I loved her hair too. I thought it suited her.
I didn't like her hair. I was like, no, I didn't like her hair, but
I thought it suited her attitude and everything. I thought it was just perfect for that.
I loved the pantsuit that she went to when Rachel was meeting the parents for the first time at the house, and she had that pantsuit on. I was like,
it looked really comfortable. I know it's going to sound weird, but it looked like a light material. You know, Singapore is hot and humid, and it just looked like it would have been perfect for that. And the size of her ring when she was helping Rachel look for a dress. Also, I have to say, the dress that she wears when she goes to meet them, that beautiful rainbow dress, it's beautiful. That one's one of my favorite dresses from the film. But she had this massive ring. It was like bigger than her hand. It was this big, gigantic, I don't know if it was a pearl or something. I don't know. It was huge. And I just was looking at it thinking that is not even a practical ring. But everything she wore was great. I loved when she drove up to the house and she had in the boot, she had all the different costumes ready. And I'm like, that's perfect.
Yeah, I did like her costumes and the wedding. I'm going to say that the wedding,
the blue dress.
The wedding dress,
yeah,
that was so beautiful. And I think in general that they absolutely nailed the costumes for this. You know, they were ridiculously rich, and it showed that they were
Yeah.
ridiculously
Yeah,
rich
so they
in the
actually had
costumes
a
and
large budget for this film. So I was
of
Googling,
course.
I was actually Googling, was this filmed on set? So pretty much the majority of this film was filmed on location, and that was
Hmm.
between Singapore and Malaysia. So very little of this was done, in a studio or something. So that shows, the cars that came up, you had Porsches, I think there was Lamborghinis, you had helicopters within it, you had everything that flaunted, the money. You had the designer labels, you had it all. And
Hmm.
I think you needed that. Again, I've said it before, the title is Crazy Rich Asians. You need to show that it's
That
all
they
designer label that they're
are
wearing. All
crazy
yeah.
and they're crazy rich.
Yeah. So I think that it was all done brilliantly. And each person, that I think for each character, the costumes that they had suited that character's personality. So Eleanor,
Hmm.
she just looked so elegant. You can tell she had, her blouses that she was wearing with her different pants and stuff. They probably would have cost like $300 or something, if not more. Like,
Yep.
and we would pay like $20 for a blouse to put with something. It just
Yeah.
shows you that buying that quality, and she just looks so elegant, but also like a fierce businesswoman at the same time.
Hmm.
And same with, I think, the costumes for Astrid. They talk about like this saint angel almost out of all the cousins. And the clothing and the colors that they chose for her really helped. A, it suited the actress, Gemma, and B, it just helped bring that bit of personality out of the character. So
Hmm.
they've taken a lot of the story out, but it definitely showed even just in costume. And like
And
with Pick Lynn's costumes, like hers was so outlandish and different. She didn't fit in the normal square, that you should be wearing. She chose to wear what she wanted, and it went the personality of her character. You could see that in the different outfits she was wearing, the way her hair
hmm
was done compared to everyone else. I think she had a nose ring in it. It worked for
she was
her.
a bit of an outcast
Yeah.
in that world.
And you know what? That's something that they mention in the book. She didn't fit in with the rich society in America. And then I guess, normal, us poor people, us peasants, if you'll say
I felt like a peasant watching this movie. I'm like,
it.
what?
But she didn't fit in with them either, because that article got leaked about her wealth. So then they didn't want to hang out with her. So that's how her and Rachel met, is because I guess they just got along.
And another thing is that I felt we're probably going back to scenes or something like that. I just feel like when Rachel was heartbroken over Nick and that she spent days in bed and all of that kind of stuff, I felt like that was a lot better as well, because in the book, because Pickling was coming, going, come on, you need to eat, call your mum. And she seemed like to be a lot closer to her mum in the books than she did with the movie as well.
Yeah, I mean, naturally you'll have to reduce scenes to certain people
Mm.
where you can. And I think by adding the scene where the mum is helping her dress, like find the right dresses and
Hmm.
things like that for her to take away, by adding that in, you're adding that extra element and depth to their relationship. But in the book, there's so much more. But that's because, they talk all the time. They talk about how they go to Thanksgiving and things like that together.
Hmm.
A lot of that got cut out, but I do like that part of the book too, because I think it explores some different themes. So the
Hmm.
book definitely, like for example, Colin, he obviously suffered, and when Nick would be like, oh, I can tell he's going to come down, he's going to crash, his mood's going to crash soon, and he almost had those very sporadic emotional spikes. And then when Rachel and him split, Nick then goes through a depression, and it's just nice to see that Colin and Nick had that brotherhood, that they could pick up on these signs with each other. So like Colin left his honeymoon early and he's like, I know you're depressed in my apartment, I'm going to come and see you. And then
Hmm.
like when Nick could realize in the book that Colin was going to crash in his mood, he would try and lighten the mood for him or take him to a different restaurant or something that he thought could help with that mood. And I just thought it was really good to explore the depths of those characters, that yes, they might be crazy rich, but they can still also suffer these sorts of emotional spikes that we would too.
And I do like the fact that in the movie they showed how fast gossip travels.
Yes, actually, that was a note I made. I remember when I was listening to the book, because I had seen the film already, and I was listening to the book, and when it got to the part of, at the beginning, going through Radio 1 Asia in the book, you're like, okay, yeah, you can follow it. But I think for visually, it was done so well at how it traveled and between different actors or people, and then from there it would jump with just the little message icon on the screen, and to see it pop up, it just shows you how quickly it traveled that way, whereas in the book it did take a little bit to sort of show that. But it's just so funny how fast the gossip travels.
I know. And the scenery, oh my gosh. And when they were panning over Singapore, I was like, oh, I remember that. Like the restaurant, the building where it looks like a ship.
Yep.
So it's two buildings. So
what is it? Marina Bay Sands?
I think so.
Or Marina Bay?
I was in Singapore quite a long time ago. Like
Marina Bay Sands.
When I saw that, I was just, because that, it's like over 100 stories tall, and it took like 5 seconds in the lift to go all the way up.
Oh my God, I would get such a headache.
And that when you got up there, you could have, we had a few cocktails up there and had like a really nice dinner up there, and it was so beautiful to look on to Singapore.
That it's on the bucket list of places for me to go.
Although when we landed, the first place we went to was Macca's. Because I was like, that's what I know. But we had some really nice street food, and it was such a beautiful place. But the heat, and I like that they mention how hot it is there. It was so humid. Like you'd put on something and you'd come out of the shower and you'd just instantly need another shower.
Yeah.
So if you go, expect humidity.
I hate the heat, so I'm in the wrong country too.
I think I'm very much like you in the fact that I turn into a vampire in the heat.
I hate summer. Why are we in Australia?
I know. I'm thinking about moving to bloody Tasmania.
I know. One day I think I might. So I want to touch on the soundtrack really quickly. I was addicted to this soundtrack when I watched this film. I loved it. I loved that, you had a lot of different Asian artists getting together. I also love that they had Kina Grannis sing at the wedding. Like they actually had her perform for the film when she's walking down the aisle.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And that was, like I mentioned before, that was beautiful in the way that the water came down. But it was just, that's all it was of the wedding. I was expecting to see so much more lavish scenery, and
there wasn't much more. The most lavish thing in the book was that the trees were hanging off the roof, which I kind of like the water. I feel like that just looked so much more beautiful.
It was.
With
that
the
was
water.
One of my notes was, holy hell, that what a beautiful wedding.
And I think they really showed what having a ton of money for a wedding can show. Also, I don't know if you probably haven't seen the film as much as I have, but every time I watch the film, the princess, the economist that Rachel sits next to at the wedding, so when the water comes out, she looks all surprised, and it almost looks like a genuinely surprised reaction.
Yes,
and I just wonder if maybe they kept that element away from the guests of the party to capture the actual emotion as a guest, not knowing that water was going to come out onto the aisle. Plus, I would hate to clean that place up after. You'd have to really make sure you get all the water out of there. And to think that they spent
like $14 million or something ridiculous on a wedding.
I know. Well, the film, guess how much budget this film had?
$1 billion.
It had $30 million budget, so it was like $10 million less than this wedding in the book. Less.
They only had $30 million budget.
And look how incredible it was. They were able to shoot on location. They had an amazing cast. They had insane cars and costumes, and everything was just incredible. Even to get the artists.
I have to say that the cast was incredible in this.
Yeah, even the soundtrack was incredible. It was insane, and it actually grossed $235 million worldwide.
Wow.
The film was very successful pretty much in almost all countries except China.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it didn't do too well. So I was reading up on it, and I think it didn't really hit the market for them. Just back to the soundtrack, the director, John Chu, he actually personally wrote to the members of Coldplay for permission to cover Yellow. Yeah, so it's actually on the soundtrack. And same with, there's one of the Madonna songs. I don't know if it's like a version. That Virgin.
Like a Virgin.
I've been listening to Triple J Like a Version a lot. I don't know if it's one of Madonna's songs also was covered, but it was really cool to hear those covers sung in, different languages compared to English. So the soundtrack I loved the soundtrack, and I still listen to a lot of it.
I liked it, but it wasn't my favorite movie.
I really like this film. I've seen it many times, and I probably will continue watching it. Since we're at this point, shall you tell me how many movie reels you give the movie and how many books you give the book out of 5?
Okay, so I have actually written this down because I thought, I would make notes about what I'm giving. So I'm going to give the book 3.4 pages. I would definitely read this again. I had lots of fun listening to it. And like I said, I was halfway through it and I'm like, huh? I'm halfway through it. That's crazy. And the storylines, and I was very conflicted. Like I said, because I liked the storyline, but it also made me physically want to throw up for the amount of money and waste and shame that I have on people about how it's just blew my mind, because I would never in my life have any sense of how much money that is, and I can't comprehend it. But yeah, so I'm going to go with 3.5 book pages. Yeah, I liked it, and I would probably listen to it again. I think I'm curious to now know about the trilogy. The movie, I'm going to go with 3 stars. I did enjoy the movie. I was just disappointed in a lot of stuff that they cut out, and I don't think I would watch this movie again. I didn't hate it. It just wasn't one of my favorite movies.
Fair. Yeah. Okay. I would rate this book 3.5 out of 5.
Copycat.
I loved it. It was so entertaining and definitely much more in depth. It built on so many characters. Like, you learnt more about the grandmother even, which I know we were going to talk about earlier. I might throw this in really quickly, but you learnt about where her wealth came from, why she's got those Thai guards with her at all times, why she's always at home and things like that. You learnt so much more about her as the matriarch. You learnt more about, Astrid and Michael. There was just so much more character building in the book, and I really enjoyed that.
Yes.
I will definitely read the other 2. I don't think I'd reread this one, though. I don't know. Like, to me, I think I've heard the story. I don't need to listen to it again. That's why I would give it a 3.5. As for the movie, I genuinely loved this film. This film is what got me interested into reading the book. I didn't know it was a book. I loved the soundtrack. I loved the over-the-top crazy richness elements about it. The costumes are incredible. The cast was incredible. I would give this a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
Also, I want to read a few fun facts that I'm reading now. Did you know that this was Henry Golding's first film?
No.
So he had only done, I think, a few travel shows and things at the time, but yeah, this was his first film.
Wow.
And also, just back on costumes that we were talking about, so I'll just read this piece that I found out. So once the word got out that this film was being made, a lot of luxury designers, they actually were loaning their items to be in the film. So you had Ralph Lauren, Elisa, Dolce & Gabbana, Dior, things like that. So they were loaning. So that's where they saved a lot of money as well. If they're going to loan this, it's free advertising for them to be in those clothes. Why not? Why wouldn't they?
Yep.
Even Michelle Yeoh, she loaned some of her bigger jewelry pieces for the film.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty cool, hey?
Yeah.
Okay, so the important question, because this is what matters this year.
Really does. I have half a point already.
Yeah, okay. Rub it in.
I'm only at half a point.
All right, I'm going to start with, as we do for books, if anyone who doesn't know. First of all, let me just explain. Anyone who doesn't know, we're doing a quick, well, it's not quick. We're doing a competition this year. Who can guess, the scorings that our film selections get. Whoever gets the most by the end of the year accurately gets to have the extra episode in December.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've decided that the extra, if I win, the extra episode is going to be a Miracle on 34th Street
Uh,
because Ange can't stand it,
and if
and
I
I
win, I'm
like it.
picking a horror film because that's
Okay.
what we're gonna do.
And so if we get the Rotten Tomatoes or the Goodreads score perfect, we get a point, and if we get the audience score, we get half a point.
And you only get 2 tries for every
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the Goodreads. Goodreads is a bit different. It's out of 5,
Mhm.
so it's a bit easier. What do you think it got?
3.5, because that's what we both agreed on.
Close.
Higher or lower?
Higher.
3.75.
So close to my heart. Like, oh, no. I hate when you get really close because I'm like,
3.8.
okay. No, you had your 2 guesses.
No, but no, that doesn't count. But was
It
I
was
right at 3.8?
3.9 on Goodreads.
Okay.
Yeah, which is, I mean, I think it sums it up for what we thought as well. It's a good listen. You should listen to it. I don't think you would repeatedly listen to it.
I think that the reader was awesome.
She
did
was.
such a great job of doing all of the different characters so well.
Yeah, I agree. Completely agree.
Yes. We didn't talk about that in the other half, but I think she did an amazing job.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Well, I think we would have normally maybe mentioned her in soundtrack, but I jumped straight into the soundtrack. That was on me. That was my fault. Okay, what do you think the film got?
Okay, so it wasn't my favorite movie, but I know that people go bananas for it. From talking to my friends and looking at like what other people have said about the film, because I'm very careful to avoid, Rotten Tomatoes and even IMDb scores. I'm going to say that this one got 89%.
Close.
Higher or lower?
Higher.
92%.
Okay, I'm safe again. It got 90%.
Oh man, I was so close.
I know,
Okay.
that's why I'm like, you're only one away.
Was I close with the audience score?
No, but I think the audience score sums up what your opinion was. The audience score got 76.
Wait. Oh, you didn't even let me try that.
No, because we only ever do 2.
Okay, fine.
Well, giving you sneaky extra points. Because you're already ahead of me. It's a cutthroat game this year.
It is a cutthroat game.
Yeah, I think the tomato meter sums up how much it did make. It was a successful film, but I also think the audience score is pretty accurate as well. So not everyone, like you said, not everyone likes it. Quite a lot of people do like it. It's an average score, which I think is good. Shall we move on to
Nerdazon's Nerdy Notables?
I have been hyper-focusing on space recently, and I've been watching a lot of docos on space, and I found out that there is a planet called HD 189733b, and it's 65 million light years away, and it has a wind speed of up to 8,700 kilometers an hour, and it rains glass. Like literally not water, it rains glass.
What?
Yeah. So I've been looking, and it's getting closer to us, but not at like an alarming rate or anything. But it was only discovered in 2005.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's a little bit scary that I found that planet. I didn't find it. No, but it's just fascinating, the space. And then I was watching a documentary on the ISS, International Station. Thank you. And what they have, it's so fascinating what astronauts do, and that their hair is always up, and that they like, even if I brush it, it doesn't go down, and they have to like eat out of pouches, and they can't have, you wouldn't think that they can't eat like chips, because if they get a crumb, then that can, go into the systems and cause havoc. But they can have like steak and stuff like that, but it's always out of a pouch. And like the amount of work that they do, it's funny that they've got better internet up there than we do here in Sydney.
Oh my God, Australia's internet is shocking.
It's so terrible, but yeah,
it's so bad.
I just thought that was so fascinating that there's A Planet That Rains Glass.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I didn't even know it existed.
I've also started acting. So I've just started, and really funny thing is that one of the other members of the class, they had a scene of Pride and Prejudice where she was talking to Mr. Darcy and that they were confessing their love to each other, and we had to give out different genres of movie, and so I was like, I want to see it in a comedy. So they were like doing it as a comedy, going, but I love you. And it was just hilarious that we were talking of, like, we did our episode on Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
And then we're doing it on,
That's so
then
funny.
they had to do that scene.
Yeah, I think that does sound pretty interesting. I'm
I have
really
my
keen to
first-
see how you.
I have my first official class next week.
That's exciting. I'm keen to see how your acting comes along. You're going to blow our intros out of the water.
I hope so.
For me, not much for me this fortnight, but I can tell you I finally finished The Watch.
Yes! I hope they're not making anymore.
It wasn't 2 episodes, it was 4. I was only halfway through the season.
But did you love it?
Yeah, I really did love it. I have to say the
Kiri's
scene...
my favourite.
I know, and I do have to say I made one note that I wanted to mention. So, you know, when they go through the, like, desert area where they remember, like, their past, I don't remember her name, so I'm sorry if I get this wrong, but the werewolf girl, her acting was incredible. Like, when she was screaming, like, don't leave me, when she was chained, I was just like, oh, my God, it seems so believable that you're actually seeing this. Like, you look tormented. And it was such a good ending. I really liked it.
I hope somebody else picks it up and they make another season, because IMDb doesn't say that there's anything coming up. So I was a bit disappointed in that.
I do think the way it ended does round it off if it doesn't get picked up.
No, but I
really just like
loved
more
it.
of the Discworld series to be done. Just do them all.
Yes, I agree. And how are you going with your book?
I haven't touched it for a couple weeks.
Disgusting. I'm not mad. I'm just really disappointed in you right now.
Don't give me that. I know.
I'm listening to the second Dune book, The Messiah.
Well, okay. So I get my credit today for Audible.
Woohoo!
So I'm going to get the second act of Sandman, which I can't wait because this year the third act comes out. They're doing, I think there is only 3 acts, so in the book, like the actual comics, and they're doing all 3 of them on Audible. So I'm so excited.
Because when you were like, you need to, because I got it when it was
You gotta
free,
listen.
and I did, and I've got the second one.
So good, right?
Oh my God.
It's
So good.
so good. I wish all
It's so
books
much
were done like
darker.
this. And there's
So much darker than what I was expecting.
I can't wait
But
for
I
the
love
series.
Neil Gaiman.
I'm so pumped for the series. And I actually started Lucifer because the Lucifer series is based off Lucifer Morningstar in Neil Gaiman's comic books.
Oh, really?
The Sandman. Yeah, so I started
I
it. I'll let you know
like
how I get.
Lucifer. I do, but I still haven't watched the last season because
Oh,
when
okay.
they come out, the season finishes, and then I get distracted by other things coming out and completely forget that it's there.
Yeah, I'm only 2 episodes in, and I have to say, I don't know if I like this carefree Lucifer.
It's fun. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
I can understand, like, I think if you, for thousands and thousands
I
of
love
years, you
Tom
got
Ellis.
stuff. I know, he's so good. But I can understand that side of it, you know, thousands and thousands of years, you want to break, go and have fun. He actually looks like someone who doesn't care, he just wants fun. But after listening to the Sandman and how sort of angry he almost seems in the first act, like, and evil, I would have liked to see that evil side of him come out. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'll keep watching and I'll let you know.
So next episode's my choice. I'm doing one that has completely, like, given me anxiety and PTSD of drains. So we're doing We're doing the 1990 version of It and the 2017 part 1 and the 2019 part 2 of It.
So excited.
Yes. So if you want to follow us on Instagram or Facebook, you can follow us at Nerdazons. You can listen to us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you get your good podcasts. And we'd love to hear from you, whether it's feedback or if you've got any ideas that you would like to give us at nerdazons@outlook.com.
We also have merch done by the amazing Craftcaster, so do go and check that out. And until next episode, stay nerdy.